all of you. And we have Professor Pramod Kumar Tiwari. Professor Tiwari has working as an associate professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering at IIT Patna since December 2019. He has 10 years of teaching and research experience. He is a senior member of IEEE. Dr. Tiwari's research interests include modeling and simulation of semiconductor devices. He has supervised 4 PhD students and 19 MTech students. Another 6 PhD students are working under his guidance. He has published more than 130 research papers in international journals and conferences. He has successfully completed 5 research and development projects, and another one is currently undergoing. Dr. Tiwari has also worked to develop the startup ecosystem in the eastern part of the India. He successfully completed his 4-year-long tenure as a professor in charge of Incubation Center in IIT Patna. So we have Dr. Pramod Kumar Tiwari for this expert lecture. So I invite Professor Tiwari to start his lecture.
So thank you, sir. First of all, I would like to thank you and the administration of KNIT Sultanpur for inviting me. And also, it will be really nice that I will be interacting with more than 50 participants. And as you told me to talk more about the basics of simulations. So as I am having expertise in semiconductor device modeling and simulation, so I will talk about some basic aspects of device simulations, and then I will talk about I will show just one work, okay, which is actually a simulation work. I mean, work carried out using a device simulator. So to conclude this talk, okay. So let me start with the basics of device simulation. Although I don't have formal slides, I had slides for showing my work, but I'm not having slides for showing the basics of the device simulation. So I will just use the pen and you can say what is it? I mean, there is a Microsoft tool. I'm going to use that. I will draw pictures and things freehand. Okay, I hope that you like it. It's a virtual board. Okay, it's a kind of virtual board, and I hope that you will enjoy that. Okay, so let me share my screen first. So I hope that you can see this virtual board. Okay. Okay, so I hope now you can see this. You can see the screen. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So I am going to talk about a device simulator. Okay, a tool which is device simulator. Okay, there are many commercially available simulators in the market that are used for semiconductor device research by academia as well as by the industry. Okay, one of the tool is Atlas TCAD. Okay, Atlas TCAD. Another one is TCAD tool by Synopsys. Okay, and there is a visual TCAD. Okay, so first let us try to understand what is a device simulator, what is a simulator, and what is the use of simulator in the semiconductor industry. Okay, so simulation term, I hope that you are familiar with, because you perform a different kind of simulation. You perform MATLAB simulation, you perform circuit simulation. So similarly, there is a device simulation. Okay, and the purpose of simulation is to do something virtually in advance. Okay, to predict the characteristics of a device and circuit in advance before going for the real fabrication of the device, or before the real implementation of the circuit. Okay, and especially this simulation is quite useful for the semiconductor industry because of the following reasons. Okay, I'm just trying to explain this with the help of a few examples. Okay, I hope that I heard that there are participants from the different stream. Okay, so that's why I'm going to take a very simple example. Okay, I'm going to take a very simple example, and the example is basically is a very simple semiconductor device, and the device name is a p-n junction diode. Okay, even you belong from mechanical stream or civil engineering stream, you are familiar with this device. In first year of engineering, this is taught. Okay, where in a p-n junction device, what you have, a p-type semiconductor material and n-type semiconductor material, and there is a junction in between. Okay, and when you apply a potential drop across the p-n junction, okay, there will be a current flowing through it. Okay, and when you relate the current with the voltage, there is an exponential relationship between the current and the voltage, and you get this kind of current voltage characteristics for the diode. Okay, for the negative voltage, there will be small current. Okay, for positive voltage, the current will be increasing exponentially with the applied voltage. For reverse bias, for the negative voltage, the current will remain small, and until the device breaks down, it will remain small. However, if you apply a large negative potential, the device will break down and a huge current will flow. Okay, so you know this because you have already studied a lot of material about the p-n junction diode. Okay, you know about semiconductor, you know about p-type material, you know about n-type material, you know about the underlying physics. Okay, how the carriers are actually carriers, when you apply a certain potential, how the carriers will move from one side to another side. Okay, you know everything about the physics, and from the physics you get some mathematical expression, and based on the mathematical expression you can predict this kind of current voltage characteristics. Okay, but let us say that I have to analyze a device, okay, which has 5 layers of semiconductor. Okay, p, n, then there are another p, and then n. Okay, and then p. Okay, and it's a let's say fictitious device, it's a hypothetical device. Okay, and I want to analyze its electrical characteristics. I want to apply a potential between the 2 voltage and 2 terminals, outer terminals, and I want to just check the current which is going to flow through it. Okay, so if you start, doing research on the underlying physics of this device. Okay, there are 2 ways to understand the behavior of this device. The first one is you do research, go to the basic physics. Okay, try to see how the basic equations will be written for this given device, how those equations will be solved with the given boundary condition, and then with the help of physics, you try to reach with a mathematical relation between I and T. Okay, and you will see that this is not very easy to do most of the time because of the let's say complicated nature of this structure. Okay, the another approach that you can adopt is you can go for a device fabrication. You can go to a foundry and you can give your design to the manufacturer, and you can say that just fabricate me a device which will have 5 layers. Okay, alternative P and N layers. Okay, you get it fabricated from the manufacturer, and then you characterize that with the help of some sort of characterization tool, and then you will know what is its IV characteristics. Okay, but you know that this fabrication is a really expensive affair in terms of semiconductor. I mean, in a semiconductor industry. Okay, because you either you fabricate one this kind of device, or you fabricate 1 billion of this kind of the device, or 1 million of this kind of the device. You may have to pay let's say 10 million for a single device, or for 10 million devices. Okay, so it's always a costly affair, and you cannot do I mean you cannot just try something by just fabricating. I mean, you have some idea and you cannot quickly go to the foundry to fabricate that until or unless you are not sure that yes, I have done my model or my device is really going to be a very useful device. Okay, and it can make money for you. So what you have to do, rather than doing the direct fabrication, going to the foundry, there are some tools, simulation tool. Okay, where you can construct this kind of structure virtually, and then you can test that device. You can find out the possible outcome of the device, possible current voltage relation of the device, and if it is not what you are expecting, then basically you may drop that idea and you can save a lot of money. Okay, so it helps. The simulation softwares are helps in the iteration. Even I just gave you one absurd example, very hypothetical situation. Okay, even let us consider a single p-n junction diode. Okay, you know the diode pretty well. Okay, you know the mathematical relation, and you have also fabricated the device. But let us say that you want to do something, you want to change the device structure a little bit. Okay, so let us say that you just want to simply increase the area of n region. Okay, and want to see the impact of that increasing area on the electrical characteristics of the p-n junction diode. Okay, so what will you do? Again, either you will go to the foundry to directly fabricate that, or with the help of a simulation tool, you can optimize that particular area, because the simulation tool, either it will not give you the real silicon data, but at least you can do the behavioral modeling of its characteristics. If I have to increase this area, if I keep increasing this particular area of this semiconductor device, how its behavior is going to change. Okay, so once that is in line with as in your thinking, then you can go to finally foundry to see the real silicon data. Is it actually, I mean, how the final device with increased area is going to, I mean, you can quantify the things properly. Okay, so simulators are really good for the semiconductor industry. They are very useful, and they save actually 60 to 70% of the money that is actually involved in the semiconductor device research, because it gives us the flexibility of device design, optimizing the structure, okay, before we actually fabricate the device. Okay, so that's why the simulation is very important for semiconductor industry. Okay, primarily the simulators are used for device design and the optimization of the existing devices. Okay, or for the invention of the new devices. Okay, so this is motivation why the simulators are very popular, are very useful for the semiconductor industry. Okay, then I would like to tell you what is a device simulator. Okay, first I talked about the usefulness of a device simulator for semiconductor industry. Then I will talk about what is a device simulator. Okay, what does how actually it performs the simulation. Okay, what is a device simulator? Okay, so a device simulator is nothing but it's a PDE solver, you can say, partial differential equation solver. Okay, you know that in a semiconductor device, okay, or in a semiconductor, there are some fundamental equations. Okay, so those fundamental equations are mostly they are differential equations. So those differential equations are actually solved by a device simulator, considering the given boundary condition. Okay, so how does I mean, what are those basic equations that are actually solved by the device simulator? The basic equations are you can say the Poisson's equation, Poisson's equation, okay, which actually let us know about the electrostatic of the device, how the potential and the electric field will vary across the device. So this information we get from the Poisson equation, and then the continuity equation are also solved. Current continuity equation. Okay, so continuity equations for electron and holes. You know that there are two fundamental particles that actually contribute in the current conduction in a semiconductor device, electron and holes. So there are two fundamental continuity equations that are actually written for electron and holes along with the Poisson equation. Okay, so these 5 equations you can say. I mean, these two continuity equations and one Poisson equations. Okay, and apart from these, there could be some other equations like the carrier transport equation. There are mobility model equations. Okay, there are some other equations as well that can be solved depending upon the nature of the device. But these equations are solved together in a coupled manner. Okay, because the terms that are the parameters that are involved in the Poisson equation, the same parameter, for example, for example, let us say that the potential variation or doping are present in both equations. So they cannot be solved independently, but they will be solved together in a coupled manner. Okay, so a device simulator will solve the fundamental equations. Okay, the fundamental equations are basically discretized first. Okay, and then the discretized they are converted in linear equations, and those linear equations are solved at the different nodes of the device. Okay, so the node are created. For example, in a PN junction, let us say that I have to simulate a PN junction. I am taking a very simplistic, I mean simple picture of a PN junction, although the actual picture will be more complicated than this. Okay, so in a PN junction I have P region and N region. Okay, so there are contacts like anode and cathode contacts. Okay, so grids are created. Okay, so the grids are created by drawing the horizontal and vertical lines. Okay, so the lines are drawn like this: horizontal and vertical, in vertical and horizontal lines. Okay, so at the intersection of horizontal and the vertical lines, okay, at the intersection points, basically these equations are solved. Okay, so it's a very important to properly choose the grid points. Okay, because you see that in a semiconductor device, some area is critical area. Okay, whereas some area may not be a critical area. For example, let us say that a PN junction diode. Uh, Let us look at a more realistic picture. Let us say that the PN junction diode was fabricated in a there was a P substrate first, and in P substrate the N region was created like this. Okay, so then the two terminals, anode and cathode, were created. Okay, so this is the junction area, which is the critical area. Okay, so near the junction, we have to create a fine mesh. Okay, so that there will be more grid points. Whereas, let us say that in the deep, in the substrate area, which is too far away from this junction, the grid point may not be as denser. Okay, there may be rare grid points. Okay, but once grid points are created, then these equations are, as I said, that discretized, and then those linear equations are solved at these grid points. Okay, so a proper selection of the grid points. The grid points may be uniform, or it may be non-uniform, depending upon the device structure. There may be triangular grids, there may be rectangular grids. Okay, so these equations are solved, and the potential information about the electric field and the potential and the carrier concentration and other parameters are actually determined at each and every grid that have been defined in the device. Okay, so once these informations are obtained, based on these information, other parameters can be obtained. Okay, so the device simulators are basically PDE, PDE solver, partial differential equation solver. So these are not only, these are of course the partial differential equation solver, but the fundamental equations or fundamental equations of the semiconductor physics are solved, along with some important information of the materials that are used in the device. Okay, and the suitable boundary conditions are taken. Boundary condition means, let us say that I keep the diode in the forward bias. So anode is kept at a particular potential level. I mean, there is a potential difference between anode and cathode that has to be actually considered. Okay, and then there will be, let us say that there may be some junction somewhere in the device. So there are some sort of potential may be developed. Okay, so those things need to be are accounted together, and then the PDEs solve those equations, basic equations, and the potential, okay, charge, carrier distribution, carrier concentration, and the current density at each and every point of the grid that are actually defined are actually solved. Okay, let us say that I also want to know the impact of the heat that is generated in the device, how the generated heat will influence the characteristics of the device. So I need to also solve the thermodynamics equation along with this basic Poisson equation, current continuity equations. Okay, I need to also solve the thermodynamics equation. So once I solve the thermodynamics equations, then I can also get the information about the heat flux. Okay, how the heat is going out of the device. If because of this generated heat, there is a change in the material property, or and finally the change in the electrical characteristics of the device. So these things can be estimated. So one thing I must tell you here, that the accuracy of the simulation depends upon how accurately you choose the models. Okay, for example, I mean, you have to take care of the real situation of the device, and accordingly you have to choose the model. Okay, just I am giving one example. Let us say that I am doing simulation of a PN junction, and I have kept P side really at very high doping, and let us say N side is also kept at very high doping. I was just looking for a Zener diode. Okay, so in a Zener diode, we know that both N region and P region are very highly doped. Okay, so if I have to simulate this structure, basically I need to consider the parameters. There must be some parameters which will be influenced by the level of the doping. Okay, so for example, mobility, carrier mobility. You know that mobility is a very important parameter in semiconductor material. Okay, it tells us how swiftly a carrier can move. Okay, electron or hole. If mobility is high, the carrier can move freely. Okay, it can move quickly. For the same applied driving force, if mobility is low, it will move slowly. Okay, and you know that the mobility depends upon the doping level. Okay, so if I am considering a highly doped P plus and N plus region, so I must choose a mobility model which will be incorporating the effect of the high doping as well. Okay, so the doping dependent mobility model should be chosen in order to get the more accurate results. Okay, not only this, but you also know that the band gap of a semiconductor also depends upon the doping. So if I am keeping higher doping, then actually if I keep increasing the doping of a particular semiconductor material, band gap goes narrower. Okay, band gap means the difference between the conduction bottom of the conduction band and the top of the valence band. Okay, where there is no allowed energy states and carrier cannot stay. Okay, so that difference actually keeps decreasing when I increase the doping level. Okay, so I need to choose a band gap narrowing model which will incorporate the effect of the increasing doping on the band gap. Okay, so to get the accurate results, we need to properly understand the real situation, and accordingly the correct model has to be chosen. Okay, so this will ensure that the accuracy in the result. Okay, so this is I mean the working principle of device simulator. Okay, I actually didn't discuss this in detail. I just tried to give you this information in very briefly, that what actually a device simulator does. So a device simulator solves the fundamental physics equations along with the boundary condition in order to predict its electrical characteristics. Okay, electrical or optical, whatever characteristics you are interested in. Okay, so this is a device simulator. Okay, all right. So device simulators are, as I said, very useful for the semiconductor industry. Okay, and we actually design the devices using the simulator, and once we become 100% sure that yes, now it is the result is as per our expectation, or this is the optimized device design. After that we send the samples for the fabrication, and it actually helps a lot for the semiconductor engineers, both in academia as well as for the people who are sitting in the industry for this kind of work. Okay. So then now with this much basic introduction, I am going to show you some of the simulation results, okay, that I have obtained. Actually, I wanted to do some sort of electrothermal simulations. Okay, for a nano channel device. Okay, nano channel gate all around MOSFET. I hope that you are familiar with this. Most of you are familiar with the MOSFET device, metal oxide semiconductor field effect transistor. Okay. Okay, so I'm directly coming to the basic MOSFET structure. Okay, so here is the MOSFET structure where what I see, what you see is there is a source region, drain region, and the channel in between, the gate, the source contact, drain contact. There are four contacts. There may be four contacts, one for source, another one is for drain, one is for gate, and one may be for the substrate. Okay, so in older days, when the device dimensions used to be quite long, okay, the heat was not an issue, okay, especially in term for the MOSFET devices, okay. Uh, you might have heard about the thermal runaway problem in bipolar junction transistor, where because of the temperature, the leakage current increases, okay, and because of that leakage current, heat dissipation increases, heat dissipation, again temperature increases, and because of the temperature, again this cycle keeps going on, and it becomes really a severe issue in the bipolar junction transistor. Okay, but in BJT, in metal oxide semiconductor field transistor MOSFET devices, the when the device dimensions were used to be quite long, okay, length was quite long, and width it was in few micrometer, okay, and width was also in the micrometer. The depletion thickness was also significant. The depletion depth was a few a fraction of micrometer, let us say. Then basically this thermal problem was not there. Okay, whatever the heat was generated because of this, you can see, because of this thick bulk region, the heat was actually absorbed. Okay, I mean it could be taken out from the device. Okay, and the source and the drain contact could another sink of the heat, and heat could also be taken out through the source and drain contact, okay, along with the substrate. But over the year, you know that there have been a tremendous change in the semiconductor industry. Okay, and transistor structures has also been modified. Okay, just to in order to meet the market demand. Okay, you know that now we are carrying mobile phones in our pocket, and the mobile phone have a million and billion transistors, small transistors of small switches, which are actually the metal oxide semiconductor field effect transistors. Okay, so to maintain their performance, okay, while miniaturizing their size so that we could keep more number of transistors in the given chip area, the transistor structures has also been modified. Okay, and because of this modified structure, the heat that is generated in the device because of the Joule heating, you see that the carriers are moving in the channel region, okay, from the source to drain. So they are interacting with the lattice, okay, and they are interacting with the lattice atom. So there is, of course, there is going to be heating in the channel. Heat will be dissipated. Okay, so with the modified structure, because structures are transistor structures are miniaturized to meet the market demand, And if we are going to miniaturize the transistor size, we also have to maintain the performance. However, if you are just miniaturizing the size and performance is degraded at the same time, there is no use of miniaturization. So to meet the performance while miniaturizing the device structure has to be modified. Okay, so there has been tremendous change in the MOSFET structure, which has been now used in the semiconductor industry. It is entirely different. I mean, if we just think about the physical appearance, it is entirely different from what it used to be in the older days. Okay, so just one of the modification is shown here in this picture to maintain the performance of this device at smaller dimension. This buried layer was actually introduced. Okay, so buried layer is basically silicon dioxide layer, and on the top of the silicon dioxide layer, this device is fabricated. Okay, so what happens? The buried oxide, silicon dioxide has poor thermal conductivity than the silicon. So in this device, the heat was actually heat could be easily taken out through the substrate region. But in this device, you can see that since the silicon dioxide has a very poor thermal conductivity, it won't allow the heat flow through this region, okay, through this bulk substrate region. So there is a only path for the heat flow is through the source and drain and through the contact. Okay, so heat taking out of heat is actually a serious problem in this device, and since the heat is not taken out as swiftly, the temperature of the channel region is going to increase. And you know that at the high temperature, the electrical the property of the material will change. Okay, its mobility may be degraded, band gap may change. Okay, so because of these changes in the material property, its electrical characteristics is going to change. Okay, so I just wanted to explore the influence of this additional heat that is confined in the channel region, how this heat is going to change the electrical characteristics of the device. I carried out some device simulation, so that actually I am going to show you in this work. Okay, so what I did, I actually worked on a state-of-art MOSFET device that is used in the integrated circuits. Okay, now actually the transistors are, as I said, that structures have been modified. The physical appearance of the device is far different from what it used to be in the older days. Okay, for example, a planar MOSFET, the physical appearance was like this, that I have also shown in the previous slide. There was a source region, drain region. Okay, in between there was a channel region, and here you can see there is a gate oxide, and on the top there was a gate contact. So there was a gate contact, source contact, and the drain contact. Okay, but the modified the state of the art device may look like this, as you are seeing in this picture. So there actually what you see that a single device is going to look like this. Okay, so the source is here, you can see this is the source region, and the source region channel is here between source and drain, and it's a nano wire, not like a bulk silicon substrate. And on the nano wire you see that the gate oxide is wrapped around, and then the metal is deposited on the top to get the metal contact. So although there is a source, drain, channel, and the gate like the conventional device, but you see the physical appearance has been changed. Okay, am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So this modified structure and why this structure is modified like this, I told you that it was the intention was to maintain the performance of this structure, whereas at smaller device dimension. For example, the older channel length used to be, let's say that 2 micron, 5 micron, but nowadays device dimension is, the channel length is only 10 nanometer. So I want to have the same performance that was used to be, that was provided by a 5 micrometer device, by this device which is having a channel length of 10 nanometer. Even I'm looking forward for a superior performance. So that's why some modification was required, was done in this structure. And one of the modification, you see that the channel is a surrounded one. So if the channel is surrounded, then I can wrap the gate around, and then I can actually put the metal from all four sides. And you know that in a transistor, actually, it is the gate that is going to control the behavior of the device. So if the gate is from all four sides, it is looking onto the channel region, the gate is actually in a better position to control the channel, and that's why its performance is far superior than what it used to be in the previous generation devices. Okay, so that's why the channel is taken here. And also I took the indium gallium arsenide as a channel material, because although the silicon is a popular technology nowadays, okay, you know that silicon devices are good for the digital application, where you have to create a switch, okay, where you have to build the both P-type devices and N-type devices on the same chip with almost matching area. There is no, I mean, the area required for P devices is not much higher than that of the N devices, okay. So the integration of both P-type devices and N-type devices on the same chip is very easy as far as the silicon material is concerned, okay. But in certain application where you, let us say, you need only N-channel devices, you don't need P-channel devices. For example, you are going for an analog circuit design, okay. There, let us say, I need a discrete N-type transistor, okay. I don't need N-type and P-type. I'm not worried much about the integration density, okay. I'm just looking at the performance of an individual transistor. So there, what I will do, I will choose a superior material. Superior means the material should give rise, the material properties should give rise a better electrical characteristic. So indium gallium arsenide is one of the substitute of the silicon material, because the carrier mobility of indium gallium arsenide is very high, okay. You can see the carrier mobility of the indium gallium arsenide is 10,000 centimeter square per volt per second, okay. So this is much higher than that of the silicon. In a silicon based device, it is around, let's say, 500 centimeter square per volt second, okay. In a device, not in a silicon bulk. In a silicon bulk, it could be around 1350 centimeter square per volt second. But in a device, basically, because of some scattering mechanism, is because of some scattering phenomena, the mobility further degrades, okay. So if we have this much improvement in the mobility because of choosing another material, it is worth taking that, okay. So that's why the indium gallium arsenide is taken as a channel region, because the indium gallium arsenide has a very large electronic mobility, okay. The only problem is its whole mobility is quite less than that of the electronic mobility. So if you want to integrate the N-type, integrate the P-type and N-type together, the area required for the P-type transistor that will have the matching capability, electrical performance compared to the N device is very large, and that's why it's not practical, okay. So in discrete in certain application where we need discrete N transistor, okay, this I mean indium gallium arsenide is better choice because it will give us the better electrical performance. Okay, so that's why the indium gallium arsenide is actually chosen as a channel region. Okay, and you can also see that there are many channel region connected sharing the same source and drain. Okay, so in a MOSFET device, actually between source and drain, there is a channel region. Okay, and channel region is defined by this gate. Okay, this gate has certain width W. Okay, and you know that the current that will flow through the transistor is basically W by proportional to W by L. So by increasing the width W by L ratio, we can get the requisite amount of the current here. Okay, and this channel length is also quite large, so the gate was in the better position to control the channel in this device. Okay, but when the device dimension is shortened, when the length is shortened and also the width is shortened, then actually the electric field become two-dimensional here, and as a result the performance of this structure actually gets degraded. Okay, so that's why you see that the nanowire type of channel is used here, because in nanowire channel, I can control the channel region from all four sides. In a MOSFET, you can see the channel is being controlled from one side, where here it is being controlled from all four sides. Okay, but the nanowire is very thin, so its effective width is very small compared to this width. Okay, so although a single nanowire will give us a better electrostatic control, better short channel effects immunity, but the total drive current will be very less. So that's why a multiple nanowire need to be stacked together. Okay, so these are actually stacked, many nanowires are stacked together. They are sharing the same source and drain region. Okay, but this is a single unit of the device. Okay, this is a single MOSFET, although there are many channels, but they are sharing same source and drain. Okay, so we need multiple nanowire in order to increase the drive current, because the drive current is proportional to the effective width, and the effective width in a single nanowire is very less. Okay, so it's a kind of divide and rule kind of things. Okay, the wider channel region is modified in a thinner nanowire, and the nanowire is being controlled properly by the gate, and because of that the main problem is the drive current is less. So the drive current is now actually increased by taking the similar more number of the channels. Okay, so but it works. Okay, by this technique you can increase the current, as well as you will have a you can keep the control over its short channel effect, short channel immunity. Okay, short channel effects related degradation can also be controlled. So that's why this particular structure is chosen. And if you, however, look at from the thermal perspective, this is even worse than what we have already discussed. So because in these devices, the channel region is completely wrapped by the gate. Okay, it is wrapped by the gate from all four sides. So there is no possibility of the heat going out of the device except through the source and drain contact. Okay, so these devices are more prone to the electrothermal effects. Okay, because of the temperature rise, the material property may be the material property may be modified, and that may result into the poor electrical characteristics of the device. Okay, so that's why actually the electrothermal analysis of this device was actually carried out through a simulator, and that was actually Centaurus device simulator by Synopsys. Okay, and the other parameters that we selected for the simulations are like this: the channel length, means the separation between source and drain. We took the two different lengths, 16 nanometer and 30 nanometer, in different experiments. Okay, gate to source voltage was varied between 0 to 1 volt. Drain to source voltage was between 0 to 1 volt. The nanowire radius was 2.5 nanometer to 5 nanometer. Gate oxide thickness, that was Al2O3 in this case, because with silicon you have silicon dioxide as a gate oxide, but silicon dioxide cannot be used with indium gallium arsenide. So Al2O3 is actually used as a gate oxide in the indium gallium arsenide based devices, and the thickness of the gate was around 2.5 nanometer to 3.5 nanometer. The spacer length was 10 nanometer. Spacer length is basically this length, because only this portion of the channel is wrapped by the gate oxide. So this length is actually not under the direct control of the gate region. So this is called the spacer length, and spacers are basically used to modulate some of the electrical characteristics of these MOS devices, especially when the target is the analog application. Okay, this is the spacer length, and contact length is 10 nanometer. Metal contact. Okay, source and drain contact. Thickness was 5.5 nanometer. Source and drain doping was 3 into 10 to the power 19 per centimeter cube. Channel doping was taken as 10 to the power 15 per centimeter cube. Work function 4.7 electron volt. Thermal contact resistance was in this range, 1 into 10 to the power minus 5 to 5 into 10 to the power minus 4 centimeter square Kelvin per watt. The thermal conductivity of the oxide is 2 watt per Kelvin per meter, and the thermal conductivity of the indium gallium arsenide is 5 watt per Kelvin per meter. So here you can notice that the oxide which is wrapped around the indium gallium arsenide channel, the thermal conductivity is very less. I mean, it's only 2 unit compared to the 5 unit of indium gallium arsenide. So the heat flow through the Al2O3 is not is difficult. So that's why heat is confined in the channel region only. Okay, and only the heat will go out through the source and drain regions only. Okay. So this was the physical description of the structure, and you know that the numbers here that you are looking are actually not arbitrarily taken. Okay, what actually you have to do when you have to design a device, you have to follow the certain design rules. Okay, you have to actually follow the device design rules of certain technology nodes. Okay. Okay, for example, about the thickness of the device and about the length of the device. Okay, if I am actually talking about 90 nanometer technology node, so the channel length cannot be less than 90 nanometer. Okay, so similarly for 10 nanometer technology node, the channel length, minimum channel length could be around around 20 nanometer, 15 to 20 nanometer. Okay, so some guidelines given by the microwin technology. I'm not actually recalling the name properly, but it is technology given by some manufacturer, and based on that actually these dimensions were selected. Okay, I mean the length, the spacer length, the separation between two parallel nanowire that are stacked in the device. Okay, all has to be as per the device design rule of some technology nodes. Okay, and the same has been actually practiced here too. Okay, so these are actually the basic physical parameters. Okay, but actually as I said that the model selection is very important for a device simulator. Okay, and in a nutshell, what is required for model selection? I just let me give you a simple example. Okay, I'm not talking about a semiconductor device. I'm talking about just a piece of semiconductor. Okay, let's say that I have a piece of N-type semiconductor material. Okay, and what I'm going to do, I apply a battery between the two nodes. Okay, between the two faces of this material. I'm applying a potential, and then I observe a current that is going to flow through it. Okay, so if I do this experiment, if I perform this experiment, I will see this kind of nature, V versus I. It will increase initially, and then the current will saturate it to its maximum value like this. Okay, so to understand this, why the current is increasing initially at the low field, okay, or at the lower potential, and then why it gets saturated at the higher potential value. Okay, so you know that the current is basically flow of charge carriers. Okay, a rate of flow of charge carriers. Okay, so what you need to know first, how many charge carriers are there in the device? Okay, what are their respective energy levels? Okay, are those carriers are actually free to move in the material? Okay, so how many effective carriers are there in the channel region, because that can actually participate in the current conduction. You see that all the carriers, all the electrons that are present in a crystal may not participate in the current conduction. Only the free electrons will be participating in the current conduction. Okay, so just to know what are the number of the carriers, okay, what are their energy level, so how many of them are free to move in the carriers. So we need to know the information about the carriers. Then what we need to know, what is the potential distribution in this semiconductor region. So in order to obtain the potential distribution, so once we have the information about the potential distribution, I mean, when this external voltage V is applied, then how this is distributed in this semiconductor. Okay, so that will actually responsible for at what rate, what is the speed of the carriers, how the carriers are moving through the semiconductor. Okay, so once you know the number of free carriers, okay, and then how those carriers are moving, okay, in the crystal, then only you will be able, what is the mechanism of the through which the carriers are moving, because you know that in a semiconductor there could be drift mechanism or diffusion mechanism. Okay, let's say that the semiconductor that I have taken here is having non-uniform doping, means this side is highly dense, I mean doped, and this side is rarely, the doping is less in this side. So there is a concentration gradient. So because of concentration gradient too, the carriers can move. Okay, so all the physical aspect of this material aspect, as well as of this structure of this material must be known, or we must be able to understand it properly, and based on that we will do the model selection. Okay, for example, if you are sure that if the drift diffusion model for the carrier transport is useful for this kind of the device, then only we will select the drift diffusion model for the carrier transport. Okay, in drift diffusion model, basically the drift, it is assumed that the carriers are moving through the drift and diffusion phenomena. Okay, drift means when you apply electric field, carriers are actually movement are directed in a particular direction, and diffusion means when there is a concentration gradient, carrier will move from high doping side to lower doping side. Okay, but you see that in certain devices, if the device dimensions are really very short, this drift diffusion mechanism will fail. Okay, so it may not be applicable. So there are advanced models like energy balance models are chosen. Okay, so I will here I have, let's say that I've taken the drip diffusion model for the carrier transport. Okay, then for mobility I have taken a Philip unified model. So this will address the doping, temperature variation, electric field. Okay, because with electric field mobility can change. With doping can material doping mobility can change. With temperature mobility can change. So I must have a, if I see that in this particular device, these are actually the dominant effect, like doping is high, temperature may also rise because I am looking for the electrothermal simulation. And at the same time, if the device dimension is very short, so electric field is also going to be very high. So these factors may influence the mobility. So I must choose a mobility model which will address all these effects. Okay. There are very simple mobility models as well, constant mobility models, where you just give a single value of the mobility. But in that case, if the field is changed suddenly or the temperature is increased, okay, then those effect cannot be addressed properly. Okay, so that's why I chosen the Philip Unified Mobility Model for the simulation. Okay, then the Dirichlet boundary conditions were chosen, where all contacts were isothermal. Okay, so source contact, drain contact, gate contact were taken as isothermal, but we assume that the heat that is coming out of the device is not changing the ambient temperature. Okay, ambient temperature remains same. Okay, means the amount of the heat that is coming out of the device is actually you can say less, not going to increase the ambient temperature. If you also want to address the impact of the increasing ambient temperature, then you can actually choose the other boundary conditions. Okay, non-isothermal boundary conditions. Okay, so similarly, the thermal conductivity is a very important parameter of the material. Okay, if the particularly if you're interested in the heat transport mechanism in the device. Okay, so and also because we are looking at the nanowire, so when you decrease the thickness of a material, the thermal conductivity becomes a function of the thickness. Okay, so I must choose a thermal conductivity model that will address the impact of the wiring dimension. So that's why this model, Connelly model of the thermal conductivity was used. Okay, and then for the heat transport, this TD model, the thermodynamic model, was used. Okay, for the simulations. Okay, and when we simulated the structure and use another one important mention about the simulations. Okay, if your aim is to know the characteristics of a slightly unknown device, or there is a known device but you have made certain modification in the device. Okay, and you are simulating that device using a device simulator. Okay, to observe its characteristics. Then one important aspect is the calibration of the models. Okay, that is actually important, because if you do not calibrate the models with the some real experimental results, okay, or some already existing models, okay, then actually your outcome may not be accurate. Okay, so that's why the most of the models that we have chosen used in the simulations were calibrated with some sort of experimental results. Okay, so that we could predict the accurate results. Okay, so when this device, the nano gate all around structure, the MOSFET, indium gallium arsenide based MOSFET, was simulated. Okay, basically we consider the four channels, 4-channel device where 4 nanowires were connected in parallel, and we are sharing the same source and drain. Okay, so when the thermal simulation was carried out, then you can see the temperature profile here. What a device simulator can give you. This is one of the outcome. Okay, the temperature profile is shown here. Means at each and every point of the device, how the temperature is varying, that you can estimate. Okay, so here you can see that the near source and drain and channel interface, the temperature is highest, which is 373 Kelvin. Okay, so this simulation was carried out at ambient temperature. Means the ambient temperature was it was considered that ambient temperature was 300 Kelvin. So keeping 300 Kelvin, this simulation was carried out. Okay, so what you see that the hot spots are actually built in the device. The hot spots are the region where the temperature is highest. Okay, so you can see the peak temperature goes up to 370 Kelvin. So 70 the normal temperature was, room temperature was 300 Kelvin. So the hot spot temperature is above 70 Kelvin. Okay, so this change in the temperature increased delta T, which is 373 Kelvin. That may change some of its electrical properties. It may change the carrier mobility. Okay, the carriers which are moving between source and drain, their mobility can be compromised. Okay, the band gap of semiconductor may be compromised. So even the carrier density may be affected because of the increased temperature, and this will have a combined effect over the drain current. Okay, so here you can see the drain current ID versus gate voltage of this MOSFET is plotted. Okay, and then you can see with self-heating means the temperature effect was considered. The current is degraded a little bit in the saturation region. Okay, this is actually the more realistic simulation, because if the temperature is rising up, then it will have influence over the characteristic, and eventually the final overall electrical characteristic, means the IV characteristics of the device gets compromised. Okay, little bit. So that's why you see this thermal aspect was actually essential for these ultra short devices, because that has really had some impact over the electrical characteristics, and it is actually degrading the electrical characteristics significantly. Okay, so here you can see some other parameters that you can obtain through the simulation. You see the electronic temperature profile is shown, and you can see how the electronic temperature is actually increasing. So in the source region, it is very low. When we move towards the drain region, because drain is at higher field. Okay, because drain voltage is at higher than the source voltage. So when the carriers moves towards the drain region, it keeps gaining energy, and this E temperature, this is equivalent temperature for the electron, energy equivalent temperature. So that's why you can see that when we move towards the drain region, its equivalent temperature is rising, and it goes maximum at the source drain channel interface. Okay, when carriers enters into the drain, it will release its energy, and you can see that's why in the drain region the temperature is low. Okay, the lattice temperature here towards the source side it is less, but when we move towards the drain side, basically it is the highest at the drain channel interface. Okay, and this is the heat flux actually shown here, how the heat is actually getting dissipated through the device. So all these information you can get it through the simulation, and that will effectively help you to having a good design for the device. Okay, you can ensure that your device is less prone. You can adjust the design and you can ensure that these effects will not very severe on your device characteristics. Okay. Some other parameters were actually also shown, and it is shown that the temperature, the heat that is confined in the device will actually degrade the performance of uh, the device. Okay, so in very brief, actually, I just tried to discuss what is simulation and how the simulation is done. Although I couldn't show you the code of a simulation program, okay, that you can easily get through on the internet. Okay, you can even go to the website of this device simulator Atlas or Centaurus. There you can see the programs were written, and the programs were not very complicated. In those programs, what you actually see that the structure geometry is defined, then the different regions are defined, and then which region is made up, what material is used in those particular regions, those are defined, contexts are defined, then the physical model, what are the different physical models that are used in the simulation are defined, and then some numerical techniques are defined which are used to solve those partial differential equation. Okay, so these things you will see, and then which kind of simulation you are carried out. You are carrying out this DC simulations or AC simulations. So accordingly, it's the command will change. Okay, so there is not much intelligence required for writing a code for the device simulator. The intelligence is required for selecting the proper models, proper physical models that will ensure that your simulation is outcome is actually accurate. Okay, otherwise if you simulate something by taking any models, okay, for example, you are going to simulate an optical device, you are expecting an optical nature, but you copied models for a silicon based device. So silicon, as you know, is a indirect band gap material, and it has not very excellent electrical property. So the final outcome will be wrong. Okay, so that's why this care has to be taken. Okay, these are the important points, and that must be kept in the mind while the device simulation. Okay, the proper selection of physical models and the methods used for simulations are very important to get the correct output results. Okay, so with this I would like to finish. Now I am open to take your questions. If you have any question, any doubt, please feel free to ask.
Any questions from participant side?
Hello, sir. Good evening. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, actually, shall we do it this type of simulations for any projects related to the video streaming and any support?
So for video streaming, actually there are different softwares. Okay.
Yeah.
So this software that I actually talked about are basically the device simulator. Okay, where semiconductor device simulator, where you actually can simulate the semiconductor material based devices. Okay, some optical devices where are the devices designed for UV application or infrared application. Those can also be simulated. Okay, but only semiconductor devices can be simulated with this software. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sir, this Atlas software is a commercial software or?
So this is actually commercial software. Okay.
Okay.
But actually there are few softwares that are freely available. There is a website called nanohub.org. Okay, so there are some free open source code available, or some of the device structure. So you can refer to that nanohub.org, and you can get some free software or some devices. Like there you will not get a lot of flexibility, but for example, if you want to simulate a double gate MOSFET or FinFET, so you may get some module over there to carry out certain simulations. Not all simulations for a device.
Sir, is this software related to Linux system or Windows system, Atlas?
I think Linux is more appropriate, but I mean it can also run on Windows as well.
Sir, we had bought Mentor graphics software actually, TCAD,
Okay.
but we were not able to use it because it is so tough to understand that software. It is an open source software, and there were a lot of difficulties. Even their resource person.
Yeah, that is true. But you can actually maybe you can take some more tutorial. Many video lectures are there on YouTube. I think so. Okay. Or you can also ask to the manufacturer to get its detailed manual, and you may get a lot of help from there. Okay.
Sir, any difficulties with Atlas if you want to purchase it? Means I just wanted to know because we had difficulties with Mentor software. So now
No, not like that. Actually, it depends upon your. I mean, you must be fully aware. There are so many modules. Okay, and you must be knowing before the purchase what actually you are going to do, and so accordingly you can select the modules and you can do the negotiation. Otherwise, they will give you a very. I mean, they will ask for a very huge money. Okay.
yes.
If you already know that yes, what module you are actually required for your research work, then you can tell them that I need only this much, and you will be better positioned to negotiate for that.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So I hope that I mean it may happen that all of you are not actually well aware about these stuff, but I kept it very generic in nature so that we'll at least understand uh, uh, how the device simulation is done and what is the purpose of that. Okay, so even if you have some any generic question, general question, any query in your mind, you can just discuss that with me. Okay, don't hesitate and don't feel shy. Any sort of question.
Any more questions from the participant side? I think there is no question regarding that. So thank you. I would like to thank Dr. Pramod ji for delivering this nice lecture, and I hope all the participants which are not very related to such device simulation and electronic background, but also they have learned the basic idea of this simulation technique. Thank you very much, sir, for this nice presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much
Okay,
for
sir.
giving me this opportunity. Thanks. So, sir, may I leave now?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thanks
Okay.
again.
Okay.
So, dear participants, so this is the end of today's second session. So, we will meet at tomorrow at 10 o'clock, 10 to 12, then 12 to 2 o'clock, and then the next lecture is 3 to 5 o'clock. Tomorrow onwards, we have some basics of the simulations, and also we have the hands-on, lots of hands-on training of LabVIEW and all other software. So thanks for giving your time, and we will meet at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.